Got a robo mower. Couple robo mowers. Have you seen those? You going up 101 yet?
There's, I
No.
know what you're calling those.
I haven't seen those.
Totally autonomous.
Yeah,
Trying to do, I think, a bunch at night.
Yeah.
Distraction.
yeah.
Okay.
I've seen them.
Yeah, we tested one on the Nisqually cut a couple of years ago. Time to go.
Yeah.
Like a room. People are like.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Study session of May 23rd is called to order. Donna, can you do a roll call, please?
I will. Councilmember Bode,
Here.
Councilmember Sherman. Here. Councilmember Gutierrez,
Here.
Mayor Nesco.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schmidt.
Here.
Councilmember McDowell is absent this evening. And Councilmember Peterson here.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
So tonight we're having a study session. Public Works Director Jay Harris has information for us about street trees in downtown corridor.
Yes, pleasure to be here tonight. Mayor Nisco, Deputy Mayor Schmidt and Council, Jay Harris, your Public Works Director. So we have a presentation, a PowerPoint that we put together and to try to describe what we did in the past, just trees were pushing up the sidewalk, got an arborist report done. Council said, hey, how does that fit with the downtown visioning plan? So we went and chased that for a little while with Jones and Jones, gave you a presentation on that. And then we decided that was quite expensive to do. And so we need some shorter term solutions. I think what Jones and Jones did was good work. I think in the future, widening the sidewalks probably a good goal, put in some more like curb bobots, that sort of thing. But in the end, we need to maintain our sidewalks and our street trees, you know, soon. So anyways, Brett Armstrong, our wastewater superintendent, is actually giving the presentation tonight. And I'm here, so I'm like the color commentator and he's the play-by-play. How's that? Brett?
Okay, so. Yeah, a little bit of the background, we had the trees assessed in prior arborist in 2021. We're contemplating on which ones need to be removed and which ones we can temporarily keep and just do some modifications to the roots and grades and make them so we don't have to do all of them.
Yeah, so he had this high removal, medium and low removal, and you can see high removal, bunch of trees. And medium was like pretty soon after, and then low. So anyways, what happened with the trees is they're 20 years old. They weren't planted with root barrier. That's pretty standard now. Back then, this was a standard type of installation. And so the tree roots, especially these Chanticleer pears or Select Cleveland, they're searching for water, right, and nutrients and such. And so the sidewalk is a nice area for it to go. A little harder to get under the curb and into the street. There's a few spots that have pushed up the curb, and that's a little more rare. But the arborist comes out and says, hey, your sidewalks are getting pushed up everywhere, and the roots get bigger and the sidewalk will keep coming up. And there's only a certain amount of grinding you can do also, right? The sidewalk's about 4 inches thick. And so my prior job, we said, if it goes any less than 2 inches, you're starting to get into maybe some, you're going to gravel eventually, right? And so that didn't make a lot of sense. And there's a lot of spots that have been ground significantly, right? So there needs to be the next level of planning here. So that's what we're here to keep going over. And so you can look at the picture, page 2, bottom right. That's one of the more significant issues.
Yeah, and then Jones and Jones came in on page 3 to lay out the vision that they could work with the downtown visioning. Streetscape, widening the sidewalks. Downtown merchants were concerned about losing parking with this full layout and starting over with all smaller trees. But that project would be quite costly. So staff was kind of thinking at that time, we do have a very old AC water main down there that's going to be need to be replaced, and We need to tie that project in, kind of like Western Gateway project with a water line and a street improvement project.
All new service laterals, so we're going
Yeah.
across the street, it's gonna get sliced and diced down the road,
Yeah.
it's in our water CIP to get done. This asbestos cement pipe, is nearing end of life. We have very limited valves on it too, I don't know if you were out by the clock tower, you see a big patch over there. That was one of the valves that we tried to shut off and it wouldn't go off, and they, actually twisted the bonnet on it, it's a 1950s valve. And broke it and it started leaking, and it wasn't an immediate emergency, but we went out to fix it and it just caused all sorts of issues. So these old assets need to be replaced down the road, and this is sort of targeted as one of the more important ones. And when the valves under a parking stall too, which doesn't help it either.
And so for. This is kind of an outlay of. Where we're planning on working, we have. In 2023, $80,000, that's right now for design for streets improvements. We recommend that we put that on hold and use it to improve some of these areas that need it, sidewalks and trees. And then replacing up to 9 trees, removing 3 trees. And adding 5 missing trees. We'll notify everyone prior to doing any work in the area, and it'll probably be block by block. We're not going to just go through and do them all at one time, so we'll limit the congestion. And areas that we can just grind the sidewalks and stuff, we'll do that, but it's been done before and we're getting pretty thin in some of those areas, so. Trees are gonna need to be replaced. We did find some large caliper, select Cleveland pear trees. They're 20+ feet tall.
Yeah, they're
Trees. Growing trees, we found those, have those to replace some of the missing trees.
But we only have 3 so far though, so I challenged the crew we have some options here. 1, go find some more. 2, start our own nursery somewhere and build some trees, right?
Are we
So
propagating any of our own?
that's correct, and get luckily these pear trees, they grow fast, right? They really do well. This is a variety that likes to go vertical pretty fast. And so finding some that are already pretty big, the first year they usually don't grow any, and they sort of a little stagnant. But year 2 and 3, you're going to see these things really take off. So we're looking for more. There's a place called Big Trees Today in Hillsborough that has some. We're checking with them. We don't have to drive that far. We don't have to. These came out of Snohomish, and they only had 3 of them. So I don't know, there's a tree place there that had some. They were $500 a piece too, which was even the better deal. So the smaller ones are 150, that sort of thing. So we thought there's some significant value there in a tree that's pretty large at a reasonable price. And so we picked up the 3 we can get. And I mean, the plan is to probably go in. There's how many spots were there where there were missing ones? 5 total missing. Well, we have 3. We were just going to get those. We need to get them in the ground soon. You don't want to be planting much longer, right? So
And the larger trees keep consistency with the treescape downtown. It's less, it's visually more appealing. There's less than an impact. It's visually as you're going down the street and seeing, 1.5 inch caliper tree that's 6 feet tall, and you have these 25 feet tall. Tall
I
trees.
think it will help lessen the visual impact, and we're staying with the same variety. Just one problem, the arborists or Jones & Jones recommended before to replace with different varieties. And the reason for that is if you get like the Dutch elm disease, Mark and I were talking about that all trees get wiped out. And so currently there isn't a lot of things that go after these pear trees, but it can be devastating for the community that someone can come through and wipe every one of those trees out, right? So it's just something you live with. Our suggestion is to put the same trees back in again, just to keep uniformity and keep your fingers crossed. These trees have been used for about 30 years, this particular variety. A lot of people have been working with them. The only big problem with them, one, they'll push up the sidewalks, once they get older, they do get brittle too with age. And ice storms and wind can take out some larger branches and split off pieces of the tree. The arborist was talking to us about that. But other than that, I think we'll be all right long term, especially if we keep replacing them as we're noting problems and that sort of thing. I think, short term, for the next 10 years or so, we should be all right with these. And then at that point, the council can decide, do we want to take them out and start over again? Do we want to widen the sidewalks? Do some different things similar to what Jones and Jones was talking about. But for right now, let's keep them big, keep them looking good.
Yeah, we're gonna come back with some questions. As the semi-plan set on what's being proposed. So. City crews are planning to trim the trees away from the buildings and around streetlights, signage. And parking stalls. And then. These trees are probably gonna be big enough that. We can do a few lights, we may not do the major. Lights on them, but majority of these are going where there's already a tree. Really close to it. And this just kind of illustrates on. Certain areas where we don't have a tree. Where the sidewalk is really coming up on 3rd and Railroad. Both these pictures are the same. We're talking about maybe removing this tree because there's a tree right next to it and we can do some sort of. It's right on an ADA ramp. We can eliminate some of this stuff.
Tree number 2 is a problem. It's right in that ramp and you can see the tree number 2 picture. It's really pushed up. So, but luckily there's a tree right next to it. So we're suggesting maybe get rid of a few of the trees that are right next to another tree right now.
The hydrant is in a weird location.
Yeah, and we were even thinking maybe of moving that bench. Over to where it faces the street and move that garbage can over in this other area.
I always wondered why I looked at the parking lot.
Do you guys have a good idea of what the underground utilities are like on Railroad?
Yeah,
Well, the water lines, not good,
Yeah,
but.
so how much stuff is around there?
In actual.
Alleys.
In the alley side? Okay.
Then I don't think, as far as other utilities, I think gas is in the gas is in the alley,
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
So we're not really held back by that at all, relocating utilities. Other than water.
other than.
Okay.
And then this is the tree rate. In the Green Square parking lot. It's on the sidewalk, it's been ground. It's a massive tree, but we are,
there's tree number 4, right?
yeah, contemplating. Taking that one out, because it has some severe root, if we get in and damage it, it's most likely gone. Tree number 5 is not there, we were kind of gonna look for suggestions on. Maybe relocating this to a different side of the tree, the sculpture.
It needs
It's
to go
pretty-
away
needs to
from
be repaired a little bit too.
repaired and it's right in that crosswalk. If you pull up there every once in a while, you look over there, if you think someone's walking to the crosswalk, I've
What's the-
done that a couple of
What's the
times.
story on that? Where is that? What's the
It's
original?
called the Optimist. It originated back in the late 90s.
Come on, Mark.
Tim Crane, yeah, I know. Actually, it was a guerrilla art project. It was actually bolted to the tree grate and then local residents pitched in to purchase it and donate it to the city. At that point, it's incurred some vandalism over time. It used to have a kind of a steam gauge face, on it, had a sundial and a cane, and it's been damaged over the years. It doesn't represent what it did at one time.
Got it.
Whether that can be rehabbed or not, I don't know. Mr. Crane's no longer with us. He passed away
Has it
recently.
been essentially kind of abandoned though? It's like.
Essentially,
Okay.
yeah.
It gets decorated at Christmas time. with
I- I saw
bark
stuff.
and things on it.
Yes. So it could easily be relocated.
Yes,
It's a couple mollies,
A little more
concrete
prominent
there. If
Yeah,
that's-
right, to get it away from the crosswalk, but let people decide where it wants to go and
Yeah.
maybe send it in for a little bit of maintenance, get it. Back out again, maybe get a plaque on what, is there a plaque that are saying what it is?
Yeah.
There's not.
Okay, then maybe we do that at the same time.
Okay.
And then tree number 6, right in front of Key Bank, you can see. This one is pretty bad. We can replace it, but there is an abundance of trees. You can actually see a little bit of the one right next to it in the upper corner there. But that one's, and I don't know if you guys have walked this, but you've definitely been sparingly picking what we're gonna remove or slash replace.
We've walked it about 6 times now, so.
And some of these are leaning out. Like number 7, leaning out towards the road, blowing up some sidewalks. You can see the grind marks we've done over the years there.
What that is hard to guy and stake a tree that's in a well, right? Normally you have posts on the young tree. And so the posts weren't in or they couldn't put them in. So we were talking about that when you put a 20-foot tree in and you put it down in the hole there. And you get a little bit of wind throw, it's gonna want to move. You're not gonna have a ton of dirt on it. So our civil engineer here, Brent, came up with a great structural idea that I think you anchor back into the concrete and stuff and tie it off down low. And so I think we have a good mechanism to keep them from blowing over or tilting longer term like that. And you take that restraint off after a couple of years.
And then trees 8 and 9, 8 is removable. 9 there's a tree right next to it, but you can see on that one too, we've ground so much that we're actually compromising the walkway on it. And these are just staff suggestions, like it's doing obviously, but you know, we can kind of give a good baseline of what we thought might need to go with. And we are adding trees to the missing ones. So that's where 10 in front of the library or the old library. 11. This is right out here in front of the Civic Center. We're talking about maybe putting in a different variety on the side streets of some horn beams. And then there's a missing tree. Also,
We were thinking of trying to keep uniformity, start mixing some other trees in, but we can mix and match, we can do whatever we want. We have plenty of options, right? But and we were gonna keep the pears downtown and on the side streets. Go with something a little different, maybe just sort of switch it up. Coda has some different street trees on it. When we put in the new parking lot, did we match the trees to the Civic Center?
Correct.
We did, okay. So we need to try to keep trees matched if we can. And so with the street standards update, I'm gonna come back to you folks with a new street tree list. And I highly recommend to talk about some street tree corridors where you say what types of trees can be used. So you can keep some uniformity, especially downtown. I think it'd be good to specify sort of what you want where. It's just a little quick list. It's not a big deal. But that way we can ensure that as we put new trees in, you don't have what's in front of the credit union right there, which starts out with a pear. And the second one's a hawthorn. And it's really low branching, thorny. And then the next one's a pear. And then the last one here is missing. That's like, okay, so it'd be good to do uniformity. And so uniformity could be every other tree too, right? Where you change them up every other, you can go linear. We have a lot of options.
yeah, and then we have repair or replace on 15 and 16. 15 is really close to a ADA ramp also that we don't really want to blow those up and have more hazards there.
But so the word repair was on there because when you walk over there and look at it, it's like, oh, we can probably grind that again, you know, let's take a look at it. So we have the word repair. And then, but 3 or 4 years from now, it might turn into a replace, right? So we just wanted to get it set up that, you know, there's not an X on it sort of yet, but we need to be watching these where it has pushed up the walkways already.
Yeah, and then we also have its repair replace in front of across from the Evergreen Square. and add the missing trees. So a couple of these missing trees places, I don't know if people remember that we had those concrete planters.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, that was assuming one of those locations right there, looks like it was a square.
Great spot for a new tree.
So. I can't recall when we talked about this before. So a couple of things that kick around in my brain regularly about railroad, Franklin, Coda, whatever. The railroad specifically, railroad's super wide and it's fast. And I'd like to work on that. Where did we end up with medians, with trees and tree medians on railroad? I can't remember.
I think it was a budgetary constraint,
No.
just painting the medians, right?
No, I mean, that was certainly a consideration, but from my recollection, 2016 downtown visioning plan, it was particularly to do with the community use of the roadways for Forest Festival, Christmas parade, et cetera. That they wanted to keep railroad open. There was some conversation about some other mobile options, but that wasn't anything that was incorporated at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, and if on the Jones and Jones ones, they're talking about some old outs that didn't get it. Really good. Something from the business owners, but those approach out. A little bit narrow.
Yeah, like narrowing.
Yeah.
The goal being either widening sidewalks,
Yeah.
expensive.
Takes a tree out of the sidewalk, right, as well, and you can provide them stormwater retention or retention in those two, because you can move the water down the curb line into those
If
cutouts.
you were to
for the
build a
trees.
brand new, you would do what Jones and Jones is talking about, there's no doubt about it.
And I think that was, because the bull outs are bigger, they're kind of, they neck it down block to block.
Yeah.
So one of the ideas about the medians though is the movable median,
yeah.
and this would be a big pot, right? And the forklift would come in and move it out of the way and put it back in again.
Yeah.
And we would keep it watered, and you'd have draping flowers that come out of it. It's a little bit of a traffic hazard, there isn't any curbs or anything, but Lake Oswego in Oregon is a prime example. Go all the way down, they got a bunch of big pots, and it looks good. It costs money though, obviously, to put those in. And you gotta maintain them, but they are a good community type of thing, and you can get them out of the way too, if you have an event, a few times out of the year.
Okay. So okay, interesting that overrules traffic safety and all the other stuff, but that's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm not an uphill I'm gonna die on, so.
It is a thing that somebody can hit, right?
Yeah.
But a car that's sitting in there, a person can hit too, right?
Well, we get a lot of complaints about people crossing the street, not having signals at every single crosswalk, and not having enough traffic signals. And illumination's another question I was gonna ask, but. How do the trees impact illumination? Do we have to do anything about that? Is that
Yeah,
part of it?
so when we're trimming them, we trim them. Matter of fact, we're talking about removing a huge limb that's gone up into a light. And so Todd Rhodes and we went over that, and we're cutting the trees back for buildings and for illumination. And then the illumination downtown's about 8 years old. And I'll be coming back to you guys to talk to you more about what the replacement project is there. We don't want to run these things forever, and because you have the pedestrian scale lighting and the intersection lighting. And it's a good conversation to start planning that into one of our street budgets in the next year, 2 years. And then talk about the color or the temperature of light. Right now, that's probably in the 3,000 or maybe under degrees Kelvin is what they measure that in. Probably want to go, it's probably like 2,500. You want to get up into the 3,000s, maybe 4,000s. I walked around with a forest. We've looked at all that. We went out one night. We're checking that all out. And it will give a little more clarity if you brighten it up. The softer light's nice, right? And with the Christmas lights, it's actually pretty nice too. But I think you can get some better lighting out there. It's going to make it a little more vibrant at night and eliminate a lot of dark spots is the goal. They're called head cutoffs, and they're not going down properly. When you walk around, you'll see what I mean. And there's a bunch of light tuning that we need to do in the next year or two down there, replacement.
And I was, sorry, we had gotten a grant in the past for LED retrofits out of TIB. What are those LED now or no?
Yes, they are.
They're just a soft white.
They're soft white, and most people, they are boosting the temperature up. and, you know, getting a little more light out of them. And I think it's safer, and I think, in my opinion, it looks better, but everyone has a different opinion of what the lights. So as you're downtown at night, look at the soft lights. And I know Forrest isn't supposed to talk right now, but Forrest, where is a good LED example of something that we might go to?
Front of the radio fryer, is that the one?
No,
No,
brighter, but.
in town right now, a good illumination level would be over at like the park and ride on Highway 3. Those are all updated. Those are a really good example of the pedestrian height ones that have a historic style too, those acorn ones. Those are nice and bright, meet the current safety levels. Also, the temperatures in the park and ride are a really good example. They're in there, they're right around 3,000 Kelvin, so they're your halogen light essentially. But if you wanted even another example of a more uniform look would be down in the city of Tumwater, down by Costco. They've retrofitted all theirs. So that whole area down Falls Terrace area, those are all retrofitted, and those are all at the current standards of like 25 levels.
Yeah, I went beyond council rules there, because I knew he had the information, so thank you.
Use
Yeah,
the
thank
expert.
you.
And now slide 7.
So we're jumping topics on you guys
This
here.
one is,
I think we can follow.
added in.
So what do you need from us, sorry, before we leave for leaving trees?
Yeah, if you guys could just give your opinion on some of the locations, if you have that, most of them is pretty warranted, I think you'll see. Obviously, we're removing some and aren't planning on putting them back, that's shown on there. So if you just go to that one sheet, what is it? Sheet
I
4.
think first general approach, you know, we get some head nod for this general approach as far as the replacement repair rather than the wholesale, you know, rebuild here. And then if there's consensus, I don't know about tree by tree, but just the, you know, that gets a little bit in the weeds, right? Or the weeds in the trees, yeah. But the approach, you know, a tree that is heaving the sidewalk too much, a tree that's encroaching in the illumination or a building or near a ADA ramp, if that generally is an approach that the council can agree to, I think that gives us the direction where we can further plan and plan accordingly.
I think the recommendations are a great start. All of them. I mean,
Yeah, it's
how do you,
page 4.
how do you get the sidewalks fixed once you replace a tree? Because the roots are there. You gotta tear up the sidewalk and cut all the roots out. And
Yes, sir.
then
Replace the sidewalk
And some curbing that's going on.
and new grading trainings.
So in your priority matrix, you've got high removal and replacement as soon as possible. I'm assuming replace as soon as possible is because there's a liability concern and damage to storefronts or whatever, because there's a couple, you know, they're hanging over people's.
Yeah, so that was the arborist recommendations from a couple of years ago. We walked through it, the trees have changed, got worse, obviously. And so our recommendations are similar to his high recommendations. They're the ones that pushed up the walk quite a bit.
Yeah, I would say we need to mitigate our risk first. That's probably our biggest priority. And go from there.
Sounds like that's what we're doing.
Budget obviously doesn't allow us to go in and
Right.
do everything. This is a good phased approach and tackle what we can as we can.
So that's 3. Everybody else agree?
Yes.
Cool. There you go. Terrific. All right. Now we'll move on to parking.
Downtown, parking stalls, these and outs. We restrike them every year, 2017. Had third parking stalls. We removed those. The railroads from 1st to 5th. The west side did not have the paired parking strips. We have some pictures of what it looked like with those and put some loading zones in, and you see the picture right next to it. We're not technically losing any parking stalls. It's just an area one. You see the one right in front of Cooper Studios is a fairly large parking stall.
It's likely we'll probably gain a stall or two back
All right.
once we get it all measured out.
Some of these are.
It's just to ease the loading and unloading of vehicles, and cars can get in there parallel parking easier.
You don't pull, what happens is you can pull right up to someone's bumper and then they want to load their trunk. You're not in the center of your stall, right? These get the cars set in the right spot. And every once in a while, you're gonna have someone that pulls into the paired parking stall, right? And sort of be in it a little bit, but in general, a lot easier to unload, load. Also, if you're walking out to go get into your car, you can walk into that, and look around and walk into your car. There's a whole bunch of things in the bottom right there that it seems pretty advantageous to me. Public Works removed them, and the reason was the cross hatching that they didn't want to. They didn't want to have to keep striping that. Forrest has handed me that the stalls we put back in at 20 feet. And when you look at that, I have on the photos here, especially the third one from the left, you can see a 20-foot stall. The cars fit pretty nice in there. I mean, those are smaller cars, but you'll get your pickup and that sort of thing into it. And then the paired spot is 6 feet. So you alternate these every 2 stalls, you'd have a 6-foot little unloading zone sort of thing. And then we can look at how we stripe those two. They don't necessarily need to be the big X with the rectangle. I think that's effective, right? But is it the option? We'll talk about that a little more later. And then also maybe going to thermoplastic on these down the road, once we get them set, that saves us, especially in these low volume uses. There's not a lot of tires riding on them. It's not like cars are going by constantly and hitting these. And so my recommendation would be to probably torch down the T's and L's and to get them set correctly. So we might remove all these, put some temporary stuff down so people can sort of say, hey, yeah, we like this. And then we come back maybe with thermoplastic.
How does that affect your snowplow?
Well, that's.
That's next.
So
Because we need to keep Main Street open.
Main Street.
Yeah.
The raised pavement markers on railroad. They, yeah, we're looking for some direction in that. They worn over time. So it's either replace or remove, and we can go back to striping, still painting the turn pockets and add some color to the street downtown. But yeah, it would gain us the ability to go back and plow railroad again.
Do we have to have RPMs on railroad legally?
Or you have to have striping down.
Striping, but you don't have to have.
Great.
razor
Oh,
blades.
no, they were an option that council chose at that time. And the problem is you can't run the plow down there.
Right.
It's
Get rid of
they
it.
come up in seconds, right? And it's a lot of work to put them back in again. You can see on the upper picture to the right, that was Western Gateway. It was just freshly striped, obviously on fresh asphalt. But you can see the contrast of the two,
Mhm.
that the pockets are not defined that well. So one of the ideas was we don't do long line striping. WashDOT does it, and they use good paint, right? And it gets you almost a year. You can see it starts to fade, some, but they're coming out soon to hit the whole city again. And we probably would go with the medians, and the goal is to keep the same color and all that, if council so chooses. But maybe do them every year and find maybe a different material where we can get a little more time. This takes a tremendous amount of time for our guys to roll that out. And so anyways, we would yellow stripe the medians and then put the brown slash, is it a brown red? I can't tell, it's always faded, so.
I think it's important to recognize that these are street projects, this is street maintenance, all funded by the general fund. Our most challenged fund at the city of Shelton too. So any maintenance operations that can reduce our costs, reduce our investment on an annual basis certainly helps us out. So
with that being said, getting rid of those race markers, does that help financially in any way, shape, or form?
If we would have some things that would be.
But if we got rid of them altogether,
They've been durable, but they're near end of life. They need to be replaced. So that is gonna be a significant financial hit. To stripe that roadway every year, I think we washed out might be $500 or something, you know, I mean, it's not a huge hit every year. It's just they come through and just freshen it up. Now, if you go to the bottom left there, that's a rendering of what it would look like if you took out the raised pavement markers. And then you cross-hatched the median and took the red brown out of it, right? And so anyways, that's just an idea of what would happen there. Which every year it looks bright again. So did I answer your question?
The RPMs are not required, right?
Striping is
the stripe.
required, but the RPMs are
Right.
not
Okay.
required, that we can go and use the MUTCD. And what they did on Western Gateway is what we do, we probably would grind in the reflectors like we did there. We grind in the divot, we have the machine that does that and put the reflector down in there. It builds up with dirt and stuff over time. The sweeper keeps that somewhat clean, so at least you will have some reflectors down there. I want to talk about that though, because of and see, do we actually have to put the reflectors down? And the reason is that little grind hole just causes a tripping hazard again. It's just they're
Freezes,
they're
cracks.
intermittent, but
Causes pavement damage as well.
yeah.
And currently we do. Some striping, we do the white lines on, it's just not video.
Long line, yeah. Yeah, my big thing is every time we close down for every snow event, because the roads are dangerous, we need to make sure the downtown core is passable. And you know, if things got worse, I was just gonna suggest you guys just pop them off with the plow and
Yeah.
just plow the road and keep the road open. We'll deal with the markings later, but I don't want that to be the reason why we don't fully plow and remove the snow on railroad, because we're worried about 500 markers on the pavement, you know what I mean? The keeping the city open is a big deal to me. And being prepared for that. So yeah, if it's not required and from a traffic safety perspective, there's no additional benefit. I say you just, if you can't recess them in, then just get rid of them and stripe it.
I second that.
Thank you.
I agree.
My question would be, is there, I guess, a middle ground somewhere between the two? Because the reason that was done the way it was, staff came up with that as an alternate to create a pedestrian friendly space as part of downtown visioning, but obviously having passability for our traffic, especially during emergencies, is critical. But I mean, is there another option within MUTCD that's not bright yellow lines down the middle, that's not because the RPMs have always been a bit contentious. And again, the recess is better than the raise, but it's still not a great option. I don't know if there are other examples that we could look at that do fit our requirements that still maybe don't look like you're flying down a highway, because that's what this looks like.
Answer.
You know what I'm
That's a good
saying?
point, yeah.
So like, and I don't have that answer yet, but perhaps looking at some other communities and seeing what we could do within standards, because all of these things matter.
Yeah, well, the MUTCD calls that out, you know, whether it's raised pavement markers or this striping. So there's options in there, and I'd be more than happy to send out what the options are and some pictures of them.
That'd be
There
great.
was some consideration at the time where the raised pavement markers went in that it could save the city money over time because the striping, reduced striping annually. I'm not sure if that was confirmed, canceled out, you know, over the time frame, because it's been how long since it was been? 8, yeah, 8, 6, 7, 8 years, yeah. Maybe
Seen it
close to
saving.
that. So, yeah, that's why I'm not sure.
We stripe
you know.
every year.
Right.
We lock
Stripe
line every year. regardless.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. So it's $500
Yeah.
per estimation,
Well,
right?
Right.
You could be. you
And to
know,
mobilize all of that to stripe the whole city and then eliminate
Yeah,
6 blocks,
exactly.
it shouldn't be.
Right.
Oh, it's cheap to add it in,
Yeah.
there's no doubt. It's, I think our striping bill is somewhere around 12,000 a year, and there's no way we can do it for that.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not suggesting that's a valid argument at this
Oh, yeah.
point. I think it was an argument at that point,
Oh,
right?
So,
Whether it's been vetted completely and proven
Right.
to be a cost saving
Well, they
measure,
tried
it's
it.
not necessarily the case.
You know,
I like the striping. I think that we can get rid of those markers, and I also think maybe we can make a like four-way stop. You know, stop sign, so that'll slow traffic down if they have to stop. Maybe we do that more than one block. Maybe we pick different blocks.
The problem is you have to meet warrants, Marinisco, and the side streets are so low volume. That people, if you put in a stop sign and then there's hardly anybody over there, they just start driving through it all the time. And so there's pretty specific requirements about side street volumes and when stop signs are warranted.
I'm just thinking of some of the cars I've seen doing 60 down Railroad on a Saturday. And
Yeah.
cars in 10, 12 cars not
That's
stopping.
why
everywhere.
the road diet is so important.
Choke it down,
We need
just
to
like we
make
did
sure.
from 12, from 7th to 12th.
We need to make sure we meet warrants, otherwise, right, we're reactionary. And we're stepping out to every intersection in the city saying. Somebody wanted a stop sign or yield sign or whatever else it might be that doesn't meet a warrant, and then we're just adding costs and maintenance. And potential liability because we can't maintain those long term. So we need to make sure we meet our warrants that are reviewed by a traffic engineer and tell us. How to proceed at that point, so.
And like a four-way has like 32 different conflict points at least, right, where you could engage in a collision. So we kind of want to avoid those, which is why we're going towards roundabouts.
Have the pedestrian crossing.
Rapid flashers.
Yeah. Yep, local road safety plan has that, we'll be starting that project out, once we put some on it, but it's good. But, the one thing I want to say is the median idea, don't lose sight of that. When you look at these pictures, you guys, you can see all the way down the roadway. If you can block that median, and it needs to be removable, I get that, but come up with some concepts. Just down the road where we can, block it so you don't see all the way down the roadway. I think that'd be very beneficial, as long as it's safe.
And there were some
It'll-
examples of that in the 2016 downtown vision plan of mobile options,
Right.
because
Yep.
that is one of the things.
They were
we're
like
looking
planter
at.
boxes, right?
Essentially.
Those one of them, yeah.
But
We also
whatever-
talked about like
But
a
it's not
mini
inexpensive.
roundabout or a traffic dots or whatever they want to call them at that point too. There were some other things that were proposed or offered.
But I mean, to put it in perspective, just the baskets that we do throughout town. $20,000 a year.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, it's about $275 to $300 per basket to purchase and water for the season. So I mean, there's an immense cost to that. So if the city's taking that on, that's something we have to think about. Is that the highest and best use again? With general fund dollars? Is it, something that we look at? Including or incorporating at some point down the line as part of the beautification program, but. Yeah, all for things like the bulb outs and things that we can do to slow traffic, because. I mean, my office is right there. I see people fly all day.
Councilor McDowell came up with an idea that when we pull the summertime baskets down, we put up a basket of ivy or something that's gonna die during the winter, right? We'll get well watered, there's no problem there, of some greenery for during the winter time. And it wasn't a bad idea. You pull the summer one down, put the winter ones out that you keep in a greenhouse or something and put whatever in there that you can't kill, right? So,
Where's that greenhouse at?
yeah, no, it was a good
It's a
idea.
good idea.
Or propagating, which I
Or, I mean.
Didn't we-
Probably not that true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do some more things, right? So I think it was a great idea.
Yeah,
There's lots of space. We'll just put it out. Wastewater treatment.
job, Kathy. Question. The brown painted stuff, we're going away from that because cost and time. Kind of, sounds like that's.
I think that's up for
It's
consideration.
yeah, we want to listen to you, what you think. Are you okay with the color? It's a significant amount of time. We only get out there every other year because of the amount of time it takes. And you can see it gets pretty significantly worn on the picture, the right, the upper right there. You can see, you can barely see it. That's what it looks like after that amount of time. And so I think they're gonna get on it again this year. But the material isn't that durable, it's not long lasting. We looked into other types of materials, but those are more permanent type of applications. And I didn't know if we wanted to do that. And so,
Like a colored asphalt and colored concrete application that would take a
Yeah.
rebuild essentially.
I was- Sorry, I was in Virginia, a couple of years ago, and they had the same painted scheme that we did. The only difference was they had just gotten done doing a concrete reconstruction, concrete panel reconstruction, and they stamped it.
Yeah.
The crosswalk, and then
Yeah.
they painted it, which was pretty cool, but not a fan of the cobblestone stuff, but.
Yeah.
Worse ratings.
Go ahead, since we've already.
Sorry.
Do you mind if I offer some clarity to that color choice. I was on the downtown visiting committee that came with that. And the reason the sidewalks or the crosswalks are red and that center median is red is to represent the stamped concrete look and the aesthetic. It wasn't intended to be a long-term treatment. But it was one of the most popular decisions for beautifying part of the road diet. So that median down the middle was intended when they redid railroad to do like a concrete strip all the way down the road where you would have the colored concrete and then normal concrete as your turn lanes, and then your asphalt.
There's some
So
examples on
That's-
Water Street at the end, those center islands, the end, those have some stamped red. Concrete.
Yeah.
It's brick colored, right?
Yeah.
so that was all the
Yeah.
visuals to represent that.
Got it.
It would be in your future consideration for the street.
Yeah.
I personally would say, leave the red with the stripe.
Yeah, I liked the color breakup myself personally. It's unique. And establishing sense of place and community and all that stuff. It's kind of neat. It is, it's not totally concerning when it's impactful to operations, because there are other things that we need to have our folks working on, right? And so if we're spending a bunch of time doing it, so if there's a way we can strike a happy balance, I would be good with that. I like the
try
color.
to spend more money on materials, something a little longer lasting than the products we're using now. And hopefully it doesn't bleach out to be pink, right? It must be all over me.
Or maybe that's.
That does happen, but concrete, red concrete does bleach out.
So if we kept the color and we stripe, we just have yellow stripe around this whole piece?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, similar to,
Yeah, so your bottom left-hand corner that shows the striped median, you just take out those crosshatch and add red in the middle of it essentially, yeah. Or
so,
the top one has a yellow outline around it.
so get rid of the RP, the raised or recessed pavement markings.
Mhm.
Yes, where they're not required.
Mhm.
Do what we can to keep the red,
The red,
red,
yeah.
thank you, not brown, red, the red median.
We,
I can
we've
provide
got,
you with the.
we've got a
exact-
color match, we use it, right, we have that product here, we have
Yeah,
records of what
swatch.
we've used, yeah, exactly right.
We have,
It's on
I have
somebody's
a
roll.
pre-made rendering of that exact configuration where it's the red with the stripes around it, so I can present that to you guys, if you guys need. to Get that.
I think we're getting consensus. to do
Yeah,
that,
I think
right?
we
So
like
Aaron over here.
this.
You make it look like it's a race, people slow down.
Yes,
No,
that's what
that
I
actually
think,
is a shade.
yeah, I think it,
Like, okay,
That's an interesting comment.
Actually, a sidewalk.
Wile E. Coyote, right? So.
Yeah.
came like a whole.
No, that is becoming, a traffic slowing mechanism is creating shadows around the white stripe
Yeah.
walks and the crosswalks and things, just because
Yeah,
it
better
kind of
Photoshop.
makes people look twice and slow
Yeah.
down,
Oh.
but I haven't seen that used anywhere locally. I've just seen some samples across the nation that
Mhm.
are realistic looking.
Well, let's go back to the, I don't think, did you get consensus on the parking?
No,
Okay, let's go back to the parking and everybody feel about the parking.
If it's gonna gain us more spots and give us a better, safer course for parking and for pedestrians, I think that makes a whole lot of sense. If I recall, one of the concerns back when they made the change was twofold. One, it was they were testing the roads out and the parking. And so it had accommodated that originally as part of the larger concept, which has since been reversed, but that decision would be reversed. Second piece of that being not wanting to have to strike that essentially every year, that it was more intensive for staff to go out and put in that configuration than the paired parking. But I don't know if we're looking at using better materials.
We'll
That
figure
makes
it
all
out.
that.
It's not that big of a deal.
Right.
So it really is,
Right.
with paint, we have a template and it's not a big deal, I guess.
Paired parking, yes.
Paired parking, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right,
Wow, look at this.
okay.
As long as we're not making the spaces bigger.
Oh, I wanted to clarification on paired parking. It was on the south side, First to Fifth. The north side didn't have it in it for one reason or another. I went back to the Google Street View from 2013. And so we can put it back in the way it was, back before 2017.
Retail on the south side.
But I think that
Reason, but.
I think that is historically the reason, it's shopping district, but I think that again, if we can gain more parking spaces, and I'm all for consistency, I say do it on both sides, and I would extend it down to 7, because I think that you look at that 6th to 7th block, and you've got. You know, again, people are stopping for short amounts of time, or they're going into the museum, well, they're going in to visit their, drop off paperwork at the CPA, or they're stopping in at Zeppelin, or those are intended to be short-term visits, so to me, if we could. Use our traditional downtown 1st to 7th, I would do it on both sides, that's just me.
Do we have anywhere in the downtown core where we don't allow on-street parking? Do you know of? So we have parking spaces essentially in front of every business downtown.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
There was a
The
temporary.
uniformity helps us.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does. I mean, one side, when I saw that, I didn't know why that happened. And I just want to float that out there that if you so choose, Public Works can go and just make the street uniform. Wholly.
Yes.
Go 1, 2.
I support you.
It makes sense.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
7. Okay,
Getting work
That's all
done
we
tonight.
have.
Not a study session.
8, we got 8 actually, we got one over there. Okay, so I think we're done with this. If anybody had any questions?
Yeah, the only thing was the variety of trees on
Oh,
the side street.
I thought you just like forest on the trees.
Okay, so I promised some of our constituents that I would tell you their concerns. So I'm going to. So I had a couple of business owners come to me and say that the leaves clog their gutters. And sometimes they get on their roof and it causes problems. They're constantly having to clean their gutters. And one business owner has a problem with, like, he thinks he has a leak in his ceiling or in his roof, and he can't get to it because apparently the tree is blocking where he thinks the leak is. So I promised them that I would put those things on record, so I am.
And that's part of it in here, where we're talking about trying to get back up.
And so if we get people to use the My Civic on the city's website or download the app to their cell phone, have them send us a picture when they're standing up there of exactly what's going on. It's a street issue. It will go to Todd Rhodes and we'll be all over it.
Perfect, that's what I'll follow.
That application, you guys, please when you get complaints, have people use that, or you guys can use it too. It really helps us.
You guys are awesome on that app.
Yeah, we are.
I've never put anything in.
And I get reports when people aren't getting stuff done, right? That we get reports every month.
I think going back, this is worthwhile conversation, even if it is short, right? If the only way to get rid of the leaves is to get rid of the trees, right? And so if we're considering a walkable, livable, aesthetically pleasing downtown, vegetation is part of that.
Yes.
How we manage that, right? That's the other story. But there's gonna be leaves on the ground. They're gonna get in storm drains. They're gonna get in gutters no matter what we do trimming. The wind blows, everything else. It's part of the just say it's the collateral, mess, I guess, with the tree. If you've got one at home, if you've got one in our streetscape, we do the best we can to clean it up. Guys blow them off the sidewalks in the streets. Street sweeper comes by. There's gonna be some work from some of our business owners, some of our property owners to maintain and manage that. We just need to communicate the best we can and realize that hopefully the benefits outweigh some of those costs. But that obviously needs
As
to
long
be
as we're
consensus of the council.
Maintaining and managing it.
Yeah.
And it
It
looks,
should be a reasonable thing,
if
right?
you look down the whole picture, it looks like we're addressing probably almost all those concerns. By putting in smaller trees at this time, cutting trees down that are,
We're mitigating,
yes.
right? We're not solving it.
Yeah.
So you also have shade in the summer. Right? You handle some of this stormwater that these gentlemen have talked about, the transpiration, absorbing the water and letting it back up. Yeah.
If we get people using the app when they have an issue, when a
Correct.
tree is touching your building, well, tell the city the proper way
Let's get it.
and then action will be taken.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get it early, right? Don't wait until you have a leak. Don't wait till the gutters fill up. Let's get to us early. It's much easier for us to deal with. One tree at a time rather than go down and try to do all the trees. I think,
Absolutely.
that'd be great.
Perfect.
Well, and Councilmember Schmidt, Deputy Mayor Schmidt just brought up that, the cherry trees that we have right now between First and Second.
Yeah.
And barely onto the next block are not represented in this plan at all. So
They're
are
not.
we planning to replace those? Are we planning to leave
People
those
flock
be?
to that.
Those aren't our trees though, are they?
They're in right away.
city right
Oh,
away.
I thought they belonged to that.
They're in front, they're between First and Second on the north side.
Yeah.
They don't present any damage or liability at this point. I would recommend they stay. They
Yeah.
look nice.
There
I
was
would
one
be-
group that comes out, and does something, when we walk through there, it's like,
Yeah.
we need to take care of that, but other than that, we didn't see really any.
I think it was gonna really affect.
And I was advocating to keep it,
Yeah.
leave it,
Great.
because that's attractive.
Yeah, so they're not
Yeah.
shown on here, so we're not.
Get rid of them, okay.
Correct. If we were gonna go in there, we would come back and show you folks what we think, the options are for right there, but they're not even on the radar right now.
Okay.
Right. Great job. I
So-
like the recommendations. Go ahead.
So are those the ones represented in the arborist report with the leaded trees then?
That's correct.
Got it.
Yes.
Because there's also one at the corner of
Pretty and pink.
at the back end of Polly near the post office, and again, the app is fabulous because there's a huge broken branch in
Yeah.
that. And I was able to snap a photo and send it through, and they're like, now I know exactly where that is, they took care of it within the hour.
Plums, I think those are plum. Yeah.
Yeah.
Flowering plum.
I think of like all the community, like on the Capitol campus,
Yeah,
people come from all over the place, right? And just trying to bring more people downtown. And if we can do it through some sort of a natural resource, even better, right? So on Franklin or Coda or the side streets, maybe we consider something like that. But I don't know how you would fit that all in. It kind of looks like something you need a little bit more space for, but
they don't work well in tree wells, typically,
Don't work well in
that
tree-
landscape island
Yeah.
kind of like that, but we can look for something that might be.
or something similar that's a niche
Yeah.
kind of flowering
Yeah.
tree that would be super unique to Shelton, that would bring photographers and people downtown or whatever. I don't
Well,
know.
even if we
Thinking
could, like,
about
the native dogwoods and things that flower out or look
Those are
pretty.
pretty as well, yeah.
There's some options that are also native plantings that the conservation district may have some recommendations. And I think, again, more that we can tie this into, if eventually the plan is to connect from downtown to the waterfront, down to the yacht club, like, are we being thoughtful about how all of these things are playing together?
Yeah.
No plum trees. Boy, that's a mess on Alder there when the plums are falling off from the sidewalk.
Yeah,
Across from
they
Mickey's.
need to be bearing. Yeah, but
We don't, no thorny trees.
no, we don't want
fruit-bearing
fruit bearing trees. Yeah.
You know where I'm talking about, all those
Yeah.
plums that end
Yeah,
up on the
absolutely.
sidewalk.
Although there has been conversation about a fruit garden at some point. They were talking about wanting to put that in on city property. I don't think that would be in walkways,
Yeah,
the roadways that
Sure.
process the completely different.
Right next door, we have some blueberries and some fruit trees that have been planted with the pollinator garden. So, yeah, that'll be bearing some fruit soon.
all right.
So
Okay,
the side street tree discussion is the hornbeam is pretty vertical, right? And it's green and it has some yellow fall color. The recommendation from you folks is to maybe come up with a different side street tree that is a little more upright. Whatever we do, we're gonna have to use trees that are a little more pyramidal, right? We can't use the wide branch like the cherries. Sort of flop out, right? They need more room. It causes problems for parking, pedestrians, all that. We need to go a little columnar, but we'll get you folks some.
A good example is the frontage of Neelan Park. Yeah. On first, those are the hornbeam variety, that's more columnar.
What's right now, I don't think there are trees, but there are A and B on here, There's two that are opposite.
In the private parking there,
Yeah.
boy, I don't remember.
Would you guys plant on Rockdale, Dogwoods?
They were dogwoods originally, we've had some mortality up there, and so they've been replaced with a.
Sorry,
Okay,
it's
what
not a
was the name
popular
of that
moment.
tree?
It's all right, not trying to. pop it.
Water gush, you can see that.
I
Thank
don't
you.
know, I've been reading these varieties because I wanted to go sugar, because I just read sugar coat maple and it's not, but
They
yeah,
look
they've been replaced with a different variety.
Yeah.
That it bears some pods though, so they don't work as a street tree in that environment. They'll
Okay.
look really nice and they bear some pods. It makes it look
Something
really nice.
lace or something, and it's
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, sorry. I need to put- I just was, they look nice there.
Peterson's suggestion.
So the goal is, so if you want something that has a lot of flowers on it and such, the good thing about the pears is when the flowers drop, you get some glitter, there's no doubt about that. But if you get something with larger flowers, you know, a chain tree type of one or that sort of thing. You know, you can started getting bigger litter that time of year, and we already have leaf litter, obviously, in the fall. So it's a consideration, you know, if we go with a really good looking tree that has a lot of flowering on it. You know, we need to just watch how much litter comes off those flowers, and definitely no fruit, right?
I'd like to reiterate what Councilmember Peterson said about trying to get some natives and maybe working with the conservation district. Using some native plants instead of getting exotics and putting them here. I think
Yeah,
would be a better use of our
Yeah.
natural resources.
it's a small category of trees that work as a street tree as a native. But there may be some, it might be in other applications that we certainly can look at, like we have wider plantings and things like that. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be, great compromise. They take less water, right? They're hardier in this environment.
If you want the
Absolutely.
uniformity, that's cool for railroad,
Yeah.
but if we want to have diversity, then let's have native plants.
Yeah.
And not exotic.
Doug furs all the way down Railroad. No, I'm kidding.
And we can cut them down every.
There you go.
Make 2x4s out. Replant them.
Doug fir and hemlock, right? All right. Do you have any more questions for these gentlemen?
Thanks.
All right, okay, before council, new discussions, city manager would like to get the consensus on a letter of support.
Yeah.
Support.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So just recently, Judge Greer reached out to me. He is going to be applying for a therapeutic court grant renewal. So a letter of support was provided to the Washington State Administrative Office of the Courts for this grant program just over a year ago, and city received an 18-month grant for $199,000, and it's provided for the city's therapeutic court. And we've had, I think, 35 participants go through that court. 85% of those participants have had a success rate through that court program, and 100% have non-recidivism. So we haven't had any problems, from those folks. So it's been really successful. The grant opportunity is open again, and this grant actually is for a 12-month period with a renewal, and it actually paid prosecutor services too. So it saves us some funds on the prosecutor side of things that the existing grant does not. So it requires, or it asks for a letter of support from the city. The grant application is due prior to the June 6th meeting. So I just want to bring it to your attention. Last year, the city manager signed off on the letter of support that mentioned support from the city council. So I want to make sure you're aware of that. And if there's any questions I can answer tonight, I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, I will provide the letter of support and we'll hope for success.
It seems like a good idea.
Yeah, great.
It's a good program. We're going to need it more in the future.
Correct. It goes hand in hand with the Blake fix as well, as you know, that the opportunities for need to be provided for treatment for those that have been cited for drug use and possession in public. So that's an opportunity to put those people into a valuable program that gets them on the road to getting some help.
What was the amount again?
He's still working on that, getting some more information from Consejo and some other service providers that provide some of the treatment opportunities and programs, some interpreted programs and things like that. So still working on the exact amount of that. I'll let you know what that is.
Yep, cool.
Great, I appreciate it.
Cool. All right. Does council have any new items for discussion tonight? All right, then we will.
Mayor, sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I haven't said it. Go ahead.
I just wanted to remind you, there's no meeting next week as
Yes.
well.
Right.
Yeah, May 30th,
5 days.
Tuesday. So